Mr. Etyang, thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us about so many issues that have taken place in our country. Let me start by refreshing your mind. What do you remember about the expulsion of Asians? What was the background?
We are talking about a period which is now easily 30 years behind us, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk as I think, and in thinking I will be recollecting. And in recollecting, I can only get back to you what my brain retained.
That's right.
Or can recall. The expulsion of the Asians, to the best of my knowledge, had a lot of stories behind it. You might have read the stories about that Amin wanted to marry an Asian, and the Asians concerned refused. That Amin wanted some assistance from UK or from the West of military nature. It was refused. And the expulsion of Asians was therefore a retaliatory act on the part of Amin. But to the best of my knowledge, the expulsion of the Asians was something which, as were circumstantial, in other and as well as accidental. I'll tell you what I mean. What many Ugandans should know is that from 1962, when we got independence, up to 68, that is a good 6 years after independence, we never had an immigration act. Many people don't know this fact. The Immigration Act came about as a result of Britain adopting what was then called the Patriots Act, which is still the Immigration Act in UK up to now. Why did Britain do that? It was because a condition for her to enter EEC. Now, up to that time, you as a Ugandan passport holder could walk into Britain without requirement of a visa. Now, Britain, therefore, had to shed off its Commonwealth obligations as a condition for it to enter the EEC, because the EEC membership restricted very much movements and entries of those members of EEC, which were previously colonial powers. Because in being colonial powers, they also had a lot of extraterritorial problems, Uganda among other colonies. And that meant actually a lot more people than mere British. Now, which is why the British Act is called Patriots Act. The Patriots Act meant that from that point that act was adopted, for you to go to UK, it was not just like in the old traditional way of being a Commonwealth passport holder, but that you had to prove that one of your ancestors came from UK. Now, that was essentially a racialist act. It was so understood. Yeah. When Amin took over, particularly when the issue of his getting arms from those he expected to be forthcoming and supportive of him, as they initially did, don't forget that Britain very much supported Amin for overthrowing Obote in 71. Yeah. And I was with Obote in Singapore in 71. Edward Heath, who was then Prime Minister, was evidently very amused and relaxed that what was happening here in Uganda at the time of the Commonwealth Conference in Singapore was happening. And it was happening for the reason that he must have actually recorded in this series, that they were not happy with Obote on the move to the left policies and things like that. Now, in 72, when the real Amin came out of his hiding, having been disappointed by Britain, by Israel and the others, for not giving him arms. He was really looking around on how to hit back. Now, two things actually happened. First of all, as I've said, many people had a lot of reasons to give, but most of those reasons, some of them I should say, were really comical, because that's how the whole world was told Amin was a brute, comical fellow who was made to say certain things to be laughed at, and therefore encourage the selling or the promotion of that agency, whether it is a print agency or electrical agency. Now, in this case, of all the stories that were told as to why Amin expelled Asians, the one which comes to my mind most is the one which I personally witnessed. And in treating Amin's error, we all cannot claim to be 100%, even 75% sure as to what happened. But I can tell you this because I witnessed it, to the extent that I can even date it. On the 4th of July, 1972, I was then both Permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Chief of Protocol, which actually meant frequent visits, in fact, daily visits to State House for state functions of one kind or another. Now, on the 4th of July, 1972, I was in the Nakasero State House. Now, that evening, after apparently the four of us, that is Amin, Mustafa Ramadan, Kamis Safi, and myself, after running out of conversation, Mustafa Ramadan, not Mustafa Ramadan, I beg your pardon, but Kamis Safi turns on to Amin and said, well, look, Afande, and said, yes. Has it ever occurred to you as to why God made you a president? And then Amin turned to him in a surprised manner and said, well, look, I never even thought about it, but you tell me why, if you know, but I don't know, said Amin. God made you a president to rectify, among other things, to rectify historical wrongs. This particular wrong that you are supposed to correct is the one done on the Nubians. Because we Nubians, so said Kamis Safi, we Nubians brought the Muzungu here on our back. We carried him and we established him in Old Kampala. And and in other words, were the soldiers that did the donkey work while the Muzungu gave the orders. Now, even up to now that long after independence, Kila Kabila, as he put it, has got their place. Even the Bateso, like this Etyang, they have their place called Teso. The Baganda have Buganda. The Basoga have Busoga, and all this. But where is any typical place you call for the Nubians who brought the Muzungu here? Amin looked at him intently and said, well, look, so what? Oh, he said words to that effect. So if you don't have any place, how does that to do? What has that to do with my being president? Said, look, said Kamisi, it is for you to make sure that we get our place, called a Nubian place, and that Nubian place is actually Kampala. This is what Kamis Safi said, because the Muzungu could not have established Old Kampala as it became to be known without us, the Nubians, who were the Askaris. And then said, well, look, how is it going to be? I said, no. You see, the Kamis Safi said, even Kampala is not even occupied by Baganda. It is these Asians who came to benefit from our sweat that have taken over Kampala. And then also, so it is this is our place. The Waindi should not be in this place. It should be us in charge of it. 3 weeks after that, Amin traveled to Karamoja. And in Moroto, where he stayed a night, he took off in the morning of the 12th of August. And of all places, they went to my area in Tororo and landed outside the Rubonge barracks, the old airstrip of Tororo, called the soldiers there to parade and address them. And that's where he announced the expulsion. Because whatever he had heard from Kamis Safi, according to him, Kamis Safi, the son of a holy man, must be true. And that he had, by God's appointment, a mission to fulfill. This was it. So, the only way I can do this is to order these people out of Kampala. Now, I am not going just to wake up and use this very argument to order them out, but I'm going to mystify it. I'm going to say, well, look, I dreamt that unless some action was done, the former colonialists would come and take over the economy. So I must declare economic war.
Then we look at, of course, what followed the economic crisis.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What followed, the economic crisis, because the crisis in itself could not have got as bad as it was. I'm not saying that I supported it, no. Because basically, I do not believe that somebody should have a shortcut to wealth, which is why, of all the possibilities that existed at that time, when Amin was just encouraging all those around him, say, well, look, you go and pick up a business, go and pick up a house, a property which you like, and I will allocate it to you. He asked me the same thing, and I said, I said no. And he asked me, why? Are you opposed to my economic war? I said, no, I'm not opposed to it. That the economic war per se is a good idea, but how you are going to execute it is wrong. If it is the power, if it is the economy that we want to give to the Ugandans, we have been talking about this for years in the past. And there's a much better way of legally and humanely doing it, rather than just giving people who have been here for years. They have been born here. Some have been here longer than I have been alive. And then you say, get away, and then you begin distributing properties like that. So I'm not going to support that. And I stopped there.
Wasn't that really dangerous and bold of you stating?
No, not at all. There's one thing about Amin. The Amin I knew did not want to be criticized in the presence of a third person. I never criticized Amin in the presence of a third person. And I suppose it is true, and I have served all the presidents in this country so far. No president, come to think of it, would like to be criticized in the presence of a third person.
So, how were the allocations done?
The ministers were grouped up in threes, and some military company with the military fellow people, that they would go to street X, say Kampala Street, and then people would line up before this group of one or two ministers and armed officers, and then said, well, look, now we have such and such a business here. We'll just throw something. Whoever catches it will take it. That was done by some groups. There's no specific arrangement whereby this business were distributed. You just stood there at a line. Maybe you, who is in the very front, may be lucky enough to catch the eye of the distributors and say that you have it, or somebody to whom a piece of a stick lands, and if he catches it, it has it. That's how it in fact, was almost luck. The people took advantage of the situation.
Now, one of the negative impact of the economic war was the massive smuggling that subsequently followed. Why was there massive smuggling, and how did it happen, and why did Idi Amin kill the people who were involved in the massive smuggling?
Smuggling into the country rather than outside.
Either way, I think.
I don't know outside, but I knew there was a lot of smuggling into Uganda because I come from the border in Tororo. And there again, I personally saw quite a lot of this going on. The smuggling was definitely occasioned in the early 73, most of the 73, because goods were now becoming fewer and fewer and eventually vanished from the market. So that automatically and immediately induced smuggling. That's what induced smuggling. Now, with smuggling, those who were also working against Amin took advantage that if smuggling is the fashion, let's also smuggle in what? The fighting equipment to fight Amin. And that's why I think when being reported to Amin by whoever it is, but I think it must have been reported to him that this smuggling is not only bad in the sense of economy, which he didn't understand very much, but that along with the smuggling came also the wrong things, by which they meant guns, ammunition, and what have you, to fight against the government, which is why those who were caught smuggling occasionally were summarily executed. Not because they were smuggling innocent things like sodas and what have you, but because along with them came arms, suspiciously, or some other things that were not actually in the best economic interest of the people in the country, according to them.
The person who was charged with curbing smuggling was Bob Assos. What was Bob Assos doing with Idi Amin at that time? And why did he catch Idi Amin's eye?
Very interesting. I never got to know Bob Assos until then. What did I know about him? That when the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation was established in 1952, some 10 years before independence, that Bob Assos was one of those. Bob Assos was somebody who served in the British Armed Forces during colonial days. Now, a story has it that Bob Assos was actually one of those to be was being expelled from the country, and by accident Amin happened to be at the airport, and because Amin had known Bob Assos during Obote's time, he saved him from leaving the country and called him back. He had his contacts in Kenya. There was a famous Muzungu in Kenya who was in charge of CID, and I think that's the fellow who ruled the police in Kenya. I think he was very much in touch with Bob Assos in trying to curb some of this. Amin had a lot of respect for whites. He was in the colonial army. Whoever was white, had any semblance of authority, was a respectable commander to Amin or something. Now here was at Bob Assos, whom he knew during Obote's regime, and maybe even beyond that, and that he appeared to have contacts with those on authority in Kenya. I mean, definitely had to involve him in this work, particularly where he gave orders but was not seen doing that.
Following the invasion of the Ugandan dissidents from Tanzania in
September 1972,
the Organization of African Unity focused on Nyerere, and he was looked at as somebody who was trying to destabilize Uganda. What exactly happened?
Nyerere at no time supported Amin. In fact, he disliked the man immensely. He therefore opposed the coup. He opposed Amin all the way wherever that the opportunity occurred. Now, as to what happened on the other side in Tanzania, I could not tell you, in spite of the fact that I've got marital connections with Tanzania, which was very delicate. You could not have been Amin's senior official at the time, as well as having marriage connections in Tanzania. But somehow God guided me through there. And I will tell you that because on the occasions that I had to transact with him official business or something like that, when we were face to face, I told him exactly what I think, what I thought of some points. And knowing that maybe what I was telling him, which I took an opportunity of, was the sort of thing that I would not tell him in the presence of a third person.
Yeah. In 1974, Uganda took the turn to be the chair of the OAU. And in Addis, Amin was handed over the chair. But in Addis, at the same time, President Julius Nyerere was there. The description of what happened was that there was a kind of confrontation between them. What kind of scenario was that?
What happened in Addis Ababa could be 74, 75, or one of the 73, 74, 75. One of those was that Amin addressed the assembly. Nyerere happened to be one of the heads of state sitting down there. From there, when he was going to his seat, Amin went directly to Nyerere and shook hands with him like this. Now, in giving Nyerere his hand, Nyerere sort of compulsively also gave him his arm. And I think he just gave him the arm without uttering a word. The pictures, at least which were taken over that occasion, so reflect that there was no record of Nyerere having uttered a word in reply to whatever Amin was saying to him. So there was no meeting per se that took place between Nyerere and Amin.
Give me an insight into how the OAU was organized here in 1975.
Oh, that was my baby. That was my baby. First of all, after Mogadishu, Amin was very happy that this thing had happened, in spite of Nyerere and other people who were opposed to OAU coming here. Mark you, in 71, OAU was to have taken place here, and that's when that conference center was built, between 70 and 71. It was to have followed that summit that took place in Lusaka. And the same Yugoslav the company which constructed the Mulungushi conference center in Lusaka was the one which constructed this. But in the middle of constructing this in the late 70s, in 71 is when the coup took place here. And so it had the effect of that summit, which was due to take place here in 71, to be cancelled. So it reverted to, in accordance with the tradition. Once somebody invited the summit, and that summit did not take place, automatically it would go to headquarters for a meeting. So come 74 in Mogadishu, when a decision to take it to host it here took place, to organize a conference of heads of state, of 50 heads of state and government within a year is something which was not easy. Not when you had the whole of Europe against you, against Amin's government, when you had Africa divided over Amin's being there. So it was not, and when you had this embargo, the Western embargo on the economic activities in here. Right, yeah. It was not easy. It was not easy. But we managed. We managed actually because we knew what to do. We knew that learning from what happened in Mulungushi, that is in Lusaka, all one needed was suites for heads of state, yes. And then everybody else lived in these small hotels around that way. There were 45 suites in that hall, because that's the number of heads of state who were expected. 45 in Nile Hotel. Yeah, in the Nile Hotel. Of course, the drama of that summit was the overthrow of Gowon of Nigeria. In the middle of it, is when news came in from Nigeria that Gowon had been overthrown. And then for me, having been the minister in charge of the conference, I had chaired successfully the 24th session of the Council of Ministers. It was now left to me with the officials to quietly see Gowon off to the airport And I remember me calling me and saying, well, look, this has happened. What is going to be? Is the conference going to step? Said, no. What has happened is internal to Nigeria. Now, Nigerian chair here is not for the OAU to decide as to who is occupying it. It is for the Nigerians themselves. Whoever sits there and has got credentials will continue. So as far as the conference is concerned, whether that chair, Nigerian chair is occupied or not, the OAU continues. And was very happy about that. So now, I remember Amin asking me, what do we do now? He's here. What do we do with him? Then I said, well, look, you call him and first of all have the courtesy of telling him that that we are sorry about what had happened, and that seek his views. What does he want? What help does he want to do? Need? Because, but indicate to him that it would be nice if he left the place. And somehow, he told him something like that. And
you wasn't ready to offer him and said, I'm here.
Not at that time. Asylum at that time could not, because you are now playing into the OAU.
Oh, okay.
Into the OAU. We advised him something, just ask him to withdraw from the country and rest of it. And then I said, well, look, but where is he going? He said, you ask him where he would like to go. He cannot go back to Nigeria. That's not our responsibility. But where does he want to go? And he said he just wanted to go to UK. And I remember in my presence, pulling up $100,000 and giving them to Gowon.
What? Cash?
Yes, $100,000.
Finally, let's talk about the days of General Wumbu.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recall happened?
It had been reported to Amin to the others that the Acholis were organizing the overthrow of his government. This time, with the connivance of all leading Acholis, of whom General Wumbu was one. Once he hears something like this, he must take action immediately. And that's the basis on which actually General Wumbu became a victim. Not because he was in any way connected with any plot against the government. When the story was building that arms had been captured somewhere, they never said that they were from the archbishops or the residents. But it is one of the places searched where it was alleged that some arms were being kept there. But no arms were found in General Wumbu's residence. He called military units to address them in front of what is now Serena Hotel there. And arms were lined up, allegedly that those were the arms which had been discovered from various bad people. All of us as ministers, of course, were there. Now, all the bishops of the Church of Uganda who could were summoned there. Now, those in the process of everybody moving into the main hall, which you know, those three were segregated, and in the process, they were taken where I don't know. Now, the story that we've been able to piece up is that they were killed. These cars in which they say that they were being taken to a detention place, and that they began struggling with the driver, ending up in the accident which killed them. All that was utter lies. How come that everybody heard about the story the following day after each one of them individually had been flown to their places of burial? The bodies were never allowed to be examined by anybody else. The story was not being told after even the burial was taken place. Many people don't know that particular bit. Yeah. And I take the opportunity of saying so. Mm-hmm.
Thanks very, very much for the detailed interview that you have given us.